the Dementia Researcher podcast, talking careers, research, conference highlights, and so much more.
Welcome to the second part of a special episode of the Dementia Researcher podcast, covering highlights from ADPD 2025, held in the beautiful historic city of Vienna, Austria. I'm Dr. Isabel Castanho. I'm an instructor at BIDMC and Harvard Medical School in Boston, United States of America. There I work in the lab of Dr. Winston Hyde that specializes in computational and systems biology. I also host a podcast, She Has a PhD, which spotlights women leaders in science. I am thrilled to be back hosting the Dementia Researcher podcast for a second time, this time from ADPD, bringing you highlights from the second half of one of the most important events in Alzheimer's and Parkinson's research. I'm joined by Dr. Emma Garland from the University of Sheffield in the UK, hello. Suzanne Rode from Amsterdam UMC Netherlands, and Dr. Martina Matuski from the Alzheimer's Society in the UK. And I'm sure I messed that one up. Please correct me, Martina.
It's Martina Matuszek.
Matuszka. Okay, thank you. I mean, I'm Portuguese and my name gets pronounced badly all the time. But I really try my best. So my esteemed guests will be sharing their favorite presentations, posters, panels, corridor conversations, you name it. Their highlights from the conference. Hi, everyone, and welcome.
Hello.
Hey.
Why don't we start by having you introduce yourselves properly, in addition to your name properly. Please tell us a little bit about who you are, where you come from, and what you do. Should we actually go around, should we start with Emma?
Yeah. So I'm Dr. Emma Garland, and I'm a postdoc at the University of Sheffield. I've been a postdoc there for about a year now, and I work with Dr. Suman Day in his group in the Sheffield Institute for Translational Neuroscience. Before that, I did my PhD in the University of Southampton with Delphine Bosch. My work now mainly focuses on protein interactions in Alzheimer's disease using iPSC stem cell-based models.
Very interesting. Suzanne?
So I am Suzanne Rode. Thank you for pronouncing my name so well. I'm indeed from Amsterdam, from the Amsterdam UMC, and I work at the 100+ study, in which we study cognitively healthy centenarians, so people that are over 100 years of age, which is led by Henne Holstegen. And I am focused on the brains that are donated by these people, in which we investigate if there are pathologies and how these pathologies may differ from what we see in people that are affected by a cognitive decline or dementia. So that is, in a nutshell, what I do on a daily basis.
Thank you. Martina?
Hi, I'm Martina Matuszek. I am a research comms officer at Alzheimer's Society. Before that, I was a researcher at Sheffield as well. But the Alzheimer's Society is one of the biggest funders of dementia in the UK. We work with over 400 researchers right now, and we fund everything into all types of dementia, Alzheimer's disease and some rarer form of dementia as well, from treatments to diagnosis, care, innovation, you name it, we do it.
I can confirm because I was funded by the Alzheimer's Society during my PhD at University of Exeter. Okay, so actually before we dive into your conference highlights, I would like to highlight or to mention one of my highlights, which was Suzanne's presentation. So Suzanne gave a fantastic presentation on Friday, and you also received the Junior Faculty Award this year. Congratulations. Tell us more about that.
Thanks. Yeah, well, that is a great honor. That was handed to us on the first day. We went on stage with all these nice, talented young researchers that felt a bit unrealistic, but that is really a big honor. Shall I tell something about the presentation that I gave? Or?
Yes, please. And you're a PhD student. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That, maybe I forgot. Yeah. So I'm a final phase PhD student. So I'm actually in my extra time, to speak in football terms. I am in the final phase. Yes. And I went for an exchange project to New York City, to Mount Sinai, and there we did a lot of interesting things. And that is what I got to present here at ADPD. So what we did is we looked into the hippocampi of these cognitively healthy centenarians, and we really quantitated the amount of amyloid beta and tau pathology, which I did in New York with Jamie Walker and Timothy Richardson, which was a great collaboration. And we could actually correlate the presence of these pathologies to the cognitive assessments that we also do for these centenarians. And yeah, that gave us really interesting results, if I can say that. So we try to distinguish when brains have amyloid beta and tau pathology, but it also occurs pretty often that brains have only tau pathology, which is a bit outside of the amyloid cascade hypothesis. But we see it in almost half of our centenarian brains, of which we have over 100 now, which is the great effort of Hannah Holstege. Yeah, so I talked about what these patterns that we see and that they have a different effect on cognition. Yeah, but I was actually really nervous for that talk, maybe because of the award. I had a bit of a, and there were also some speakers in that session that I personally really look up to. When I started my my studies as a bachelor, and all these big names, and then suddenly you are amongst them, kind of. Well, not kind of. Yeah, so I was pretty nervous. So I'm glad that you liked it, and yeah, that it was a highlight for you.
I
Thanks.
can totally relate with what you said, because last year I co-chaired that session, and I don't want to brag, but I also got the award last year, and I found myself on the first day, opening ceremony, first row, sitting next to your PI, to Dr. Holstege. Is that how you say it? Yeah. And I found the courage to say hello and introduce myself. I've been a big, like, really fangirl kind of thing. Been a huge fan of her work for years. And it was, yeah, I can totally relate with what you said, but you did great. It was fantastic work and really great presentation. Not least important was Emma's poster. Oh. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your presentation?
Sure. So yeah, I had a poster in the first or second and third day of the conference, and it was on some kind of quite preliminary data, because iPSCs are hard to work with and take a lot of optimization. So we've only just got to the stage where we're starting to actually get some data from them now. So yeah, I showed our characterization of our iPSC derived cortical neurons, and what I'm looking at mainly is how the ratio shift of amyloid beta 40 and 42 changes throughout disease. So in early disease or in kind of healthy controls, we have about a 9-to-1 ratio of amyloid beta 40 to 42. And amyloid beta 40 is thought to be the more kind of less toxic version of the protein. And then as Alzheimer's disease progresses, this ratio shifts more towards amyloid beta 42, which is the more toxic form of the protein. So we're using our neurons, and I'm adding different ratios of amyloid beta 40 and 42 and seeing how the neurons react and how they're vulnerable to these proteins. So that was what my poster was kind of presenting. So I only had an N of 1 at this stage, but we saw some interesting results. We used oligomers and fibrils, because again, there's a lot of evidence for maybe the smaller oligomeric species of the protein being more toxic. So we definitely saw an increase in our neurite vulnerability assays with the higher amounts of amyloid beta 42. But yeah.
That's very interesting. I'm so sorry I missed your poster.
No, that's okay.
We actually have, so our group collaborates very closely with Doctors Dukim and Rudy Tanzi from Mass General Hospital. And Priya Naderi, who's also an instructor in our group, gave a presentation yesterday on exactly a recent paper they published in Neuronal. So I was not involved in that paper, but I keep hearing about the beta 40-40 ratios on a daily basis. So were you able to see Priya's presentation?
What session was it?
It was the last one yesterday. It was like around 7 p.m. But it was, Priya unfortunately couldn't join in the end. So he recorded the presentation. I'm pretty sure it's available online.
Yeah, if you watch
check it out. And very proud of Priya. He gave a fantastic presentation. It's great work. Okay. Let's jump into your highlights from part 2 of ADPD 2025 here in Vienna, Austria. If you're tuning in and haven't listened to part 1 yet, no worries. You can listen to the episodes in any order. In part 1, the guests shared highlights from the first half of the week. Today, we're diving into the final few days. And it's been a long week. Of course, with hundreds of talks and posters, there's no way to cover it all. So, instead, our guests will now highlight the presentations and moments that stood out the most to them. Let's start with Martina. Why don't you kick things off? What were your highlights from the conference?
Yeah, my highlight is definitely my favorite talk of the conference, and it's a non-science talk. It was by Trevor Salmon, and it's about his personal story with dementia and his wife's dementia, and it was a young onset dementia. And what I found the most interesting about it is that he talked about them, their journey to diagnosis, how they couldn't get an early, accurate diagnosis very early on, but they knew something was wrong. And then I found it really interesting that they went on a clinical trial and found the experience really positive, even though the trial was a negative trial. The support that they received was amazing, and it was a really good contrast to all of the science and especially the industry talks that we've seen that is maybe a little bit data heavy, obviously, but Trevor's story and Trevor's presentation was a really nice perspective into why we do what we do. And I think it's really good to have people affected by dementia speak at conferences like this for the researchers and working with researchers. And this is also a big thing for Alzheimer's Society, that we want our researchers to have that perspective and work with our research network volunteers. So I think that was my favorite talk.
Very, very interesting. I was not aware, actually, that ADPD had that type of session.
I also wrote it down as the top highlight.
Wow.
It was really, it caught me off guard a bit. It was really, he did really well. It was very personal. And I think we needed that. It was like, the room was silent. People were, it was really impressive. It really made a deep impression on me as well. And it's, I think, a really nice motivation as well to see that what we do collectively, sometimes you walk into a session and you may feel a bit like, oh, this is so out of my topic. I know nothing. But the whole idea of this conference is that you have all these experts on, we all work on Alzheimer's, but within that still specifically, so we are really a network, and we do that for these kinds of people and for these stories to prevent that in the future. And I think there needs to be, I think I would like to see more of that at ADPD, because it is demotivation to do your work, to do collaborations, to step out of your comfort zone. So yeah, I also, thanks for picking that. I also really want to say thanks to Trevor for that impressive talk.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And for me, it's interesting. The first time I was in your position, Suzanne, and you said it perfectly, caught off guard, was actually in the UK when I was doing my PhD. The first time I went to the Alzheimer's Research UK conference, that was the first time I saw. So usually the conference starts with someone sharing their story. And I remember tears coming to my eyes, because you also, I guess, as a researcher, you get so focused on your own problems as well, experiments that don't work, trying to publish your papers, that you for moments forget the people, and then you hear their stories, and it's what you said, you get motivated to do what you do. And I think it also can change the way you see things, the way you see your science. I remember 2 years ago at AIC, I was in a panel with Adam Smith from Dementia Researcher. So they invited a few of us with different backgrounds to discuss the highlights, similar to what we're doing today, but to discuss the highlights from AIC. And I was the early researcher representative, I guess. And there was someone else. There was actually one of the guests was someone with early onset Alzheimer's disease. And I remember being so skeptic at the time with the new therapies. And he said something that I'll never forget. He changed my perspective as he said, you know what, for people in my situation where there is no therapy available, you researchers may see that 2 months is not a lot. Yeah. For me, you see, I feel emotional with, and he said, for me, 2 months is a lot, is 2 more months where I can remember my family. And that really touched me. I was like, wow, we're sometimes so focused on certain parts of the research, of the science, that we forget to actually ask the people that are affected about it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, can I add something to that? So in Melissa Murray's talk from the Mayo Clinic, she's a neuropathologist. She told a really nice story, I would say, and I'm very sorry that I don't know her name now, but that she's in really close contact with a patient representative. So maybe we can add that. I can come back to that later because I would like to properly say the name. But that was, I think, something that more of us could do, to include in your talk the relevance of your work. And I think that Melissa Murray did really well in also incorporating that into her scientific story.
Yeah, would you say, actually, I think I saw this a lot in the UK, but I think the Alzheimer's Society and the AR UK actually put a lot of effort into involving patients and people affected by the diseases with the research. I don't know, maybe, I guess I'm the only one coming from the US today here, but I actually don't see that as much perhaps in the US, although I feel like now the Alzheimer's Association, for example, is also putting a lot of effort into that. So it's definitely something to discuss with funders, to try and provide those connections, provide those, build the bridges between the researchers and the people affected by the diseases. Wow, thank you for highlighting that. I will go actually now next to Emma.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you would like to highlight?
So one of my first highlights is from day 4 of the conference, and it was in the brain-gut interaction session, which is, I think, an area that's kind of under-researched but maybe coming to the spotlight now. So it was really interesting to hear more about it. And there was a lot of focus on Parkinson's disease because there's maybe more research into that area with the gut-brain axis. So there was a talk by Dr. Kyusik An from Seoul National College of Medicine in the Republic of Korea. And I thought his talk was fantastic. It was really clear. He explained everything. You know, if you're not in that field of research, he gave really nice diagrams. He was very clear with his talk. So he talked about the visceral sensory nerves in the transmission of these pathological proteins from the gut to the brain in the context of Parkinson's disease. So I think one of the main things that he was showing was that the vagus nerve could be one of the main transmission sources for alpha-synuclein. So they showed that there was alpha-synuclein in the colon of Parkinson's patients, and then they also found this in the dorsal medulla, which is where the vagus nerve terminates. So that was a good link for showing that this was a transmission route. But they also used organoids, which has been a very hot topic, I think, at this conference. I've seen so many posters with organoid research, which I think is amazing. They are very hard to use, but a really good technique. So they used colon organoids, and they showed a transmission from their colon organoid to the brain organoid, showing pathological spread of alpha-synuclein, I think. I think it was actually amyloid and tau. Sorry, I got that wrong. But yeah, it was a really nice talk in that. So yeah.
I didn't see it. Do they co-culture the two? How do they?
I guess the organoids, they have all the cell types from either the colon or the brain. So yeah, it has all the cell types in there. So I guess it is a co-culture of cells, yeah.
So they are able to see how they communicate.
Yes.
That's very
interesting.
interesting.
And it was almost like they had a mock vagus nerve that was transmitting the proteins along. So yeah, it was a really interesting talk. But he just gave it very well. He was very confident, but also very good at explaining his research.
It's also interesting, I find at least, to see that topic growing. It's still, I feel, under-researched.
Yeah.
But you would barely hear about it a few years ago, and
Yes,
now you're seeing more people talking about it. I'm actually excited to see where that topic is going to take us.
Because I think your gut microbiome has a lot to do with your immunity as well.
Yeah.
And it's really important to have a healthy gut microbiome, so definitely something we should be researching more into. Sure.
Very interesting. Okay. I would like to go back to Suzanne because earlier you just chimed in on someone else's highlight, which was one of your highlights. But is there something else that you would like to highlight?
Yeah, definitely. So I was speaking earlier that I was in this session with people that I looked up to.
Yes.
Amongst which was Bart de Stroper from that I know from an internship that I did before my PhD in Leuven. And he couldn't attend in person, but he recorded a presentation in which he explained how they investigate how the microglia in mice respond to treatment of murine-ized Lecanemab. And that is a thing that I've heard in multiple sessions, which I liked. And then quite soon he highlighted one gene that they found, SPP1, which was amongst the top to be upregulated in microglia that were triggered with this anti-amyloid beta antibody. And he explained on that, and they also did stainings, and it looked really convincing in mice. And then I hopped over to the next session, which was the title Microglia, and in there was Lynn van Olst, who was former student in Amsterdam and is now at Northwestern. And I think we all, there was quite a buzz about the paper that she published, so she also presented on that. And I will not go into much detail about that because it was quite impressive, and I'm not sure if I can fully replicate that correctly. But there was also the SPP1 gene, which Bart alluded to, found in mice. She also found it in human, sorry, I didn't mention that yet. So she studied actual patient material of AD patients treated with these anti-amyloid antibodies. And she also looked at the microglia response, and there was also this SPP1. So suddenly, I don't know, I felt like there were dots being connected, and I felt, I really liked that, seeing that sometimes you could feel really isolated doing a very specific study, but then it is placed in a bigger picture. And I really liked seeing that at the same time, people are, things are pointing to the same direction. And then such a gene seems so specific, right? They do all different, these difficult data analysis, and then one pops up, and then that overlaps. That's, to me, very convincing.
It's reassuring, isn't it?
Yeah, it is very reassuring.
Do you mind if I jump in
go ahead.
Lynn's talk? Because that was one of my highlights as well.
Yeah.
So I know Lynn because she has collaborated with my old PhD supervisor, Delphine Bosch, and James Nicol. So yeah, I loved her talk. I thought it was fantastic. She had so much data, so much transcriptomics data as well, which is lots of numbers and graphs.
But still, it was very clear, and
beautiful.
You could follow the story. So that is a really, really big shout out to Lynn for doing that, such a data-heavy, comprehensive story.
And she said actually she had to cut a load of data out, so she must have a ton. But I think what's really interesting is you mentioned it was the immunized brains, but it was also from the very first immunization, anti-amyloid immunization trial, which sadly did fail in its phase 2 stage. But we can still learn a lot from even failures, quote unquote failures in the field. So I think it's really nice that they're still looking at those brains and learning more from them, because then that will make hopefully the therapies that are coming out better today.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed those presentations too. And something that really stuck with me was something that Bart said about, or Dr. de Stroper, that I'm sure I'm saying wrong again, but he said something about the importance of understanding the mechanisms. And I attended the session, I believe it was in the first day. There was a discussion mostly about why some of the drugs have been, or the FDA approved drugs haven't been approved in Europe as well. That was a super interesting session. And at some point there was a discussion about why one of them was approved or had been accepted as a good one in Europe, but the other one hadn't, when if you look at the clinical data, they look very similar. And then when I went to those presentations, it was quite interesting to see they might have, basically the effects might be similar, but the mechanisms can be very different. And I find it really interesting that a gene comes up, but I'm myself more interested in bringing different things together. So I try to get away more from the one gene and try to understand how they come together as processes and how different cells communicate and so on. But anyway, so the mechanism part really stuck to me. It's like, yes, because now we can also understand why are these drugs working, how they are working, and why are the other ones not working. So I found that very interesting.
And maybe why certain drugs work really well for certain patients and not for other subtypes of patients. And I think there was also attention for like patient heterogeneity.
Absolutely.
So I think that is where we need to go as well. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yes. Precision medicine, really. Yes, absolutely. I mean, if you don't mind, I would like to highlight a few things as well. Because there were a few things that excited me too, but I think what excited me the most this year was actually presentations by PhD students. I mean, Susan being one of them, but I was impressed with multiple presentations from students from the UK. I think most of them were actually from the UK, but also Netherlands, Germany, Sweden. So a few that I would like to just mention very briefly. I'll start with the presentations and give some room for you. I don't know if you saw the presentation from Giulia Pegoraro. She's at the University of Exeter. I'm biased because she did spend some time with us last year, about 6 months with us at Harvard. But the work she presented was not what she did with us. She presented the work that is the main focus of her PhD with Professor Katie Lennon. And this is investigating molecular mechanisms by which systemic infections may impact Alzheimer's disease progression. And I really enjoyed her presentation. I mean, not that I would expect anything else because Giulia is fantastic. And she's close to finishing her PhD and is looking for postdoc opportunities. So I thought, you know.
Plug.
Yes, because Giulia is really, really good. And I really enjoyed her work, which I knew a little bit about, but I hadn't really seen a proper presentation from her. And then something else that you might have seen as well were all the presentations on the Global Neurodegeneration Proteomics Consortium, or GNPC, and they are going to release, so this is a big, for those that haven't heard about it yet, this is a big effort joining a lot of people working in proteomics. They will release their platform on July 1st. And they will also, so the platform will be available for the community, and they will also publish a few papers in the Nature journals about it, and it has multiple diseases so it's multiple cohorts, multiple diseases it's all neurodegenerative diseases, but ADPD, FTD, ALS. I think it's going to be such a powerful resource, and I could see the excitement at the conference about that. Did that stood out to any of you?
I don't think I caught, but that's really nice that they're going to publish it for availability for everyone, because I think that's one of the main things that maybe we as scientists need to be better at, is sharing our research and not being too secretive about it. So it's nice that they're giving a platform for everyone.
Actually, let's stay with you, Martina. Anything else that you would like to highlight from the conference?
Yeah, there was a few things, and I like that the researchers on these sofas have picked up on certain maybe mechanisms and themes that I thought were quite recurring during the conference and during some of the talks. I'm sure that we've all attended different talks due to parallel sessions running. You can't be everywhere all at once. But it's things like the immunity and the omics technologies that are coming, and the themes that are important to big pharma companies. So one of my highlights was a panel discussion. I think it was on a Thursday, and it was chaired by Jeffrey Cummings and Howard Phillett, and they talked about the promising strategies in Alzheimer's disease. But what really stood out to me was the bridge between academia and big pharma and biotech companies, and what is really important in collaborating between the two. And it's they said something that really struck me perfectly. It was the right models and the right mechanisms and the right targets, and that maybe academics need to be a little bit better at collaborating with big pharma and biotech, but vice versa, and more communication is needed. And definitely things like organoids were brought up, that that's where the field is moving. Obviously, we know that animal models are not the perfect models, and with the new technology, we could move to something different. And the need for biomarkers. The biomarkers, I think, are the next, thing that people are really starting to focus on more and more, with more technology coming through, with more data coming through, and with more diversity in the participants coming through. We're starting to really learn a lot more about biomarkers, and that is something that the trials desperately need as well. This is what I've learned myself at this conference, that it's the biomarkers that we really need to assess how well those treatments are really working in real life for participants, and really looking for confidence in either progressing treatments through their phases in clinical trials or killing the drugs early, to make sure that we have cheaper, effective trials that really benefit us in the future and quick. I thought that was, that whole panel discussion was very informative. And there was more things about, obviously, combination therapies and things about brain health and policy changes. So that was really a big picture panel, which I found really interesting. I don't know if you caught that.
I missed it. I mean, there's so many happening. There's like constant FOMO of missing science. I'm glad that everything is recorded. Yeah. That gives some a bit more relaxed feeling, but still. Yeah.
But I do think that ADPD is really good for researchers to come. This is my first time at ADPD. So I think there is something for everyone. Yeah. And there is also something new that you can learn every single day.
Yeah. I've really liked the talks from some of the pharma companies, actually, because I think as researchers, we often don't get to see the trial results, or we don't get to see the more clinical side of things as much. So I've actually quite enjoyed some of the pharma talks. I know maybe they're biased towards their drug a little bit, but I think it's been really interesting to see the results for sure.
Yeah, I think also actually I saw a few unexpected, I guess. I mean, I know some people that work at pharma companies that do that type of research, but it's also nice to see pharma companies doing more basic science research. Yeah. So it's not always...
It wasn't just the marketing people, it was, or the sales people, it was actual scientists like giving the talk.
And sometimes not even only testing their drug, is actually more like looking at a target. So it's like just basic...
mechanisms.
Exactly. So that was very interesting.
Yeah, I agree.
Emma, I want to ask you, did you get a chance to go to the posters?
I did, yes. There were a lot of posters. So yeah, I've got a couple of highlights. I spoke to Eliana Sherman, she's from the University of Virginia in the USA. And her poster caught my eye because she's actually working with the same cell line that I'm working with, but she has made, as we've mentioned a few times now, the organoids. And she's a PhD student. I believe she said she was in her first year or maybe second year. And it looks beautiful work. The organoids they've made are neurons, astrocytes and microglia, and they're looking at a similar thing to us with the ApoE genotypes, which is the risk allele for Alzheimer's disease, and they're looking at amyloid beta. But her poster was very nicely set out, and she was very clearly passionate about what she did, so it was really nice to speak to her about her poster.
Okay, very interesting. Any other posters?
Yes, I spoke to, who is it today? Vivi Pekala, from Eastern Finland. And again, she was using iPSC, so I was drawn to her poster. They were probably drawn to ones that we kind of know about, maybe. But she was looking at frontotemporal dementia. So again, they were doing direct conversion from fibroblasts to neurons, and they were also doing co-cultures with astrocytes and microglia. but they were looking at the C9orf72 mutation, which she said was very common in Finland. I think that's where it might have been discovered, possibly, or yeah, something like that. But again, she was a first-year PhD student, and they'd just been characterising their sort of like co-cultures. But it was a really nice poster. And actually, we have a mutual connection because I was telling her about my work and saying that we had a colleague who was doing some electrophysiology for us, and she asked where I was based, so I said Sheffield, and then she said, "It's not Matthew Livesey, is it?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, it is." So, and her boss knows him because they've done some collaborations, I think, with the EFAs. So yeah, we actually had a mutual connection, which was nice to hear. Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite interesting that often you meet someone and then you see how your network works, right?
I had someone come to my poster actually, and he saw my boss's name, and he said, "Oh, I've been emailing him because I think he gave my boss a compound for something we were using."
Right.
So yeah, another connection from just seeing it like a name on a poster, which is really cool. Yeah.
I had not. It was a different interaction, but one of my highlights, if I can, also mention at the posters was by earlier I said I was very impressed with PhD students. So this one is Sam Bolger from Imperial College London. He works with Professor Paul Matthews, at Imperial, and he presented his work describing neuronal vulnerability in Alzheimer's disease using imaging mass cytometry, with a particular focus on renin-positive neurons in the internal cortex. And it was, so for those that know me, I currently have a preprint out on bioRxiv reporting signatures of neuronal resilience to Alzheimer's disease, including in renin-positive neurons. And it was funny because I went to his poster and he mentioned the paper, and they're like, "Oh, you're Isabel, actually. You're the first author."
Very flattering.
And so yeah, but it was very. I was very impressed with his work, and I can see he's someone we should keep an eye on. He's a promising second-year PhD student, and it led to very interesting scientific discussions around his work and around the work or the topic in general. So I was very impressed with his work. And someone else, this was even. I was even more impressed in terms of this is a first-year PhD student that just started in October. And I know, and I was very impressed with her poster. So she's connecting, for those that know, EQTLs, she's doing similar thing, but with methylation. So she's connecting gene expression with methylation, with changes in DNA methylation in human brain. And again, I don't feel as bad because my choices are very biased. In my PhD, I worked in DNA methylation at the University of Exeter, so that's my obvious interest. But I was very impressed with what she presented because, again, first-year PhD student. And we ended up having a really interesting discussion around her results and where she could take it next. And it was very, very impressive. Oh, and I should say her name, actually. Again, totally wrong. Marit Junge from Lübeck University, Germany, and she works with Professor Lars Bertram. So yeah, very, very impressed with PhD students this year. Yeah. Suzanne, anyone in the posters? Did you get a chance to go there?
I'm gonna make a confession here. I couldn't survive the poster sessions because it was very crowded and there was not a lot of oxygen. So
it got hot.
Yeah, I'm gonna make use again of the online platform to look at some posters digitally. So I kind of didn't get to the posters as much as I wanted to this year.
It's heavy. And also to make you feel less bad, I also I think about 50% of the posters I was interested in were not there. Yeah. And I noticed, I think most people were from the US and they just didn't travel. Yeah. So I'm also looking forward to keeping up. And it's just a lot. My brain today is just... Martina, did you get a chance to go to posters?
Yeah,
I
visited loads. I was very excited. I love poster presentations. Yeah. And you can, for those people who can't find the online platform because maybe they didn't register, there are a lot of posters on X as well, on social media. So if you search for the ADPD 2025 hashtag, a lot of people post them. And that's how I found some of the interesting posters as well that I maybe have missed whilst walking around. And I found a poster that maybe of interest to Emma, but I'm not sure, and I want to ask you a follow-up question. So in my PhD, I worked with A-beta 42. We made oligomers and fibrils from recombinant. There was a poster by Karolina Matulewska from Lund University, and they were comparing recombinant and synthetic forms of A-beta 42, and it was very chemistry heavy. So there was a lot of about seeding the A-beta, a lot about kinetics, but they made a connection about the self-seeding and how potent and the recombinant and synthetic A-beta peptides are, and how that might make your research a little bit different to other research out there, depending on which A-beta peptide you use. So because they might have different toxicity, they might aggregate slightly different, and they had a little sticker at the bottom where you could, like a poll almost, where they were checking which peptide researchers are using for their work. So I want to ask you, which peptide do you use? Do you use synthetic? Do you use recombinant? Do you use something else?
We use recombinant.
Okay.
At the moment, we are buying it in from a company. Yes. But actually, our PhD student has just started the process of making it, with E. coli and plasmid expression, so protein purification. So hopefully we might start getting our own, but I guess it's still recombinant protein. But yeah, so that's what we use. But we try and make sure that when we've done our repeats that we will use the same batch of protein, the same lot number, so then we know it is reproducible. Because we did have a batch issue with one of the older batches, so there can be some issues with buying the protein in. But yeah.
I like it when people get creative with their posters or presentations. Like in these days filled with information, it's very nice when somebody provides some fresh idea or that triggers you, and to be a bit, I
actually stole an idea from my friend because she had this amazing idea of, obviously posters are limited space for what you can put on them. So she did a little QR code with some extra data. So I stole that idea from her. So I showed my oligomer data on my poster, and then I have my fibril data on a presentation which people could scan if they wanted to see it. So
can you see how many people scanned it?
Oh no, actually, that would have been nice. Yeah.
You could see what were the peak hours.
Yeah.
It's also a way, we were earlier sharing how it was just so many different things, that anything that can make your poster stand out, right? Yes. Can be, I'm a huge fan of better posters. I don't know if you've heard, but they have, I think it's still called that, but I think it was last year at AIC, I received a lot of compliments, but a lot of people use it. It's just a format where you highlight your main finding or like a controversial something, a big sentence in the middle of the poster. You can also put an image, and last year I asked AI to generate an image of a brain with a lot of flowers coming out, because I work in cognitive resilience, and I sort of see it like that. And I had people come in because they were like, what is this? This looks like a piece of art or something. So anything that can, but I love the idea of a poll or something like that, and really the QR code as well. I also, I've stole that in the past, adding my picture in case people miss me. Oh, did you miss me? I'm around. Just come, because you sometimes need to eat.
And they're always in the lunch sessions, aren't they?
Exactly. Or you're at the session. So
Can I add one thing? I saw a poster that was like a cartoon.
Was it the cheese one?
Yes, with yes.
It's on social media. It's on social media.
It was like a cartoon thing, wasn't it?
It was amazing. It catches your eye immediately.
There we go. This is even more creative. I must say that I've left X. I was a huge fan of Twitter, but if I can use this platform to try and bring people to Blue Sky.
I am just about to make a Blue Sky.
So yes, everyone just come to Blue Sky.
I left X as well recently.
Yeah,
for obvious reasons. reasons.
Yeah. For me, it was very hard because I've been spending the last 10 years building my research community there. But Blue Sky, a lot of us are
Blue Sky
in Blue
works
Sky
as well.
Yeah.
If everyone's on Blue Sky,
Yes.
please do follow Alzheimer Society.
Oh,
we
yeah.
are also on Blue Sky.
Yeah, I think I follow you already, but I will make sure I do. Now, a last round, this will be unfortunately our last round, but I would like to go with something a little bit different, just because I find that it's not less important than the presentations. On my list of highlights are the conversations and discussions outside the sessions or the posters. So like the corridor conversations, or lunch conversations, dinner conversation. And, this can happen anywhere. I even had a really interesting discussion on my way back from the city center to the hotel, which was so nice. And I personally thrive at conferences, and I think it's especially because of this. I love to see the science, but we can all read papers. But it's completely different when you are with the authors of those papers, and you can ask questions and have discussions. I think there's something about being eye to eye, right? Human connection. And it's so funny because I think day 2 or 3, I had a video call with my husband also to see my 6-month-old baby. And at some point he started teasing me. He was like, this is the first time also I've been away from being a mom. I was on leave in the last 6 months. And my husband started teasing me, saying that I looked happier than when we go on vacation, which is not true. I like my vacation breaks.
You're in your natural habitat.
Exactly. But I really thrive, and I feel like I go back to my science feeling more creative and motivated because of these discussions. What about you? I see Suzanne,
definitely.
yes.
It's kind of what I alluded to earlier, that you see connecting the dots and you feel connected instead of maybe in isolation with your own group. You're not alone, of course, but you work on something very specific. And then if you talk to people, then you see shared interest, values, topics. Yeah, I have the same. On the one hand, it's socially tiring, and on the other hand, it gives you energy.
Yeah.
It's like that's very, I can't find the word now, but
polarizing.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's like, has 2 sides, but I totally agree. Yeah.
Were you able to chat with your heroes, I guess, from your session? And did you get a chance to introduce yourself?
Yeah. And we met.
Yes,
Because
that's true.
We were emailing, and now we met in person. Yeah.
Yes, we can give a little teaser. So, Suzanne, I submitted a session to AIC in July with Tayin Lucas from Columbia University, and one of our invited presenters was Suzanne, and then I realized she was going to be here, so we're meeting for the first time. But yeah, very interesting. Martina, any conversations that?
Yes, for me, coming as not a researcher anymore, it's quite different. So I'm meeting people just to meet them. So if I see a poster or a session that I'm interested in, or it will be a person that we fund or part fund, I make a point of actually saying hello and introducing myself, because it's nice to see the name and the face to the research that we might not see in the lab, because we are not in a lab, we're in an office. So I've said hello to Professor Nick Fox, who was doing a MRI, an ultra-fast MRI research that we part fund. I've said hello to Martha Fiorani from UK DRI at UCL. Who we also fund or part fund for looking at new mouse models. I've met Emma for the first time from my old department when I used to work at Sheffield. So it's been really good to just meet people and meet researchers. And actually, the conversations that we've had, I've asked, what is the vibe of the research? What are you the most interested in, so that I can bring it back to our team and just see what the trends are, see what excites the researchers, see what you guys are working on, so that we can understand it a little bit better, being a little bit away from the lab, maybe.
Did you get a chance to meet Julia Pegoraro from the University of Exeter that I mentioned before?
No.
Not yet. She is funded by the Alzheimer
Yeah,
Society.
there's quite a few people that I might have missed, but I'm only by myself here, so there's only so
it's a lot to cover. That's fair. That's very fair. On top of the sessions. What about you, Emma? Any interesting, exciting conversations?
Yeah, I mean, so I've come with my lab mate, and she is fantastic, and we've actually had some really nice conversations, even though we work on the same thing and we talk all the time at work. But actually coming here, it's made us think about other things. So we've actually had some really nice conversations about some of the talks that we've seen. But you're saying about meeting some of your heroes. I feel like sometimes I'm a little bit scared to go up to them. So I did want to go up because I saw a session, I think it was Dr. Michael Henniker, and I remember citing him in my thesis so many times, but I was too scared to go up and talk to him. So maybe I should be a bit braver and go speak to people, but yeah.
It can only be an honor to them. Somebody coming up, I admire your work.
Yeah,
that is true. That's very true.
That's the best opening sentence you
Yeah,
can have.
True. And I guess maybe now, even though I didn't say hi to them at the conference, if I wanted to email them, at least I have a connection saying, "Oh, we were both at ADPD. Sorry, I didn't catch you."
Yes,
so I guess that could always, work.
I feel like that's how your PI reacted when I went full fangirl and I could see her go, "Oh, thank you, those are so nice."
Yeah.
But yeah, everyone, it's humans we're talking about, right? And now also starting to be weirdly on the other side. I've had PhD students say things like, "Oh, I'm very aware of who you are." And I get like, oh, okay. So it's we're all human, so you should do that.
And they probably also have somebody that they look up to.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's an never-ending thing. So you may soon start to just
Absolutely. Martina?
If I may just, if I can ease your mind a little bit, it's not that bad.
Okay.
They might be busy people, but they are generally very nice.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And I was quite nervous coming up to actually Trevor, who gave the personal story talk. But as soon as I said hello, introduced myself, he gave me the biggest hug.
Aww.
And it was just nice.
Yeah.
It's nice.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, I had a similar interactions because I've been working with professors Rudy Tenzi, Li Wei Tai from Boston for 4 years now. And weirdly, we had never met in person. And we are all in Boston, but they're busy. So we've been meeting for years on Zoom. It was so nice. I went to introduce myself and both of them gave me hugs. Also the same with Professor Lars Bertram. And that was so nice because there was a connection already. And, at the end of the day, they're all humans. And that was, I went to them, you're the professors. But they're very nice. I feel neuroscientists in general, we're nice people.
It's a good breed.
It's a good breed. Okay, so this was very nice, but sadly, that's all we have time for today. That said, if you want to learn more about this year's ADPD, there are lots of posts on social media, like Martina mentioned. Look for the hashtag ADPD 2025 on Blue Sky, X, LinkedIn. I know at least on those, it's there. You can also visit the conference's website at adpd.kens.com. I would like to thank today's guests, Suzanne, Emma, Martina, thank you so much for joining me in this really, really interesting conversation.
Thank you for hosting as well. It's been great. Yeah.
You're very welcome. I would like to also thank, obviously, the Dementia Researcher podcast for having me, and especially Adam Smith for the invitation, and the ADPD committee for making these 2 episodes possible. Again, I'm Isabel Castanho, and you've been listening to the Dementia Researcher podcast. Goodbye, and see you soon. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
The Dementia Researcher podcast, talking careers, research, conference highlights, and so much more.